Hi, welcome to day 16 of this 31-day journey through the book of Proverbs. We are on day 16. This is Proverbs 16. This proverb, again, like some of the past that we've looked at recently, seems kind of scattered, just a lot of little proverbs, these little two-sentence, two-line kind of bits of knowledge, of wisdom. But I think, again, if we just read through them slowly, make observations, write down keywords, circle, underline, you'll start to see patterns come out and kind of see the bigger picture of the wisdom. And in Proverbs 16, what I saw this time when I was going through it was this idea of plans. This um, the way that we live, the things that we choose, the direction we go, the decisions that we make. What got my attention was in 16 verse 25. The verse says, "There's a path before each person that seems right, but it ends in death." Now we saw that already. That was in 14:12. There's a path before each person that seems right, but it ends in death. So that's been repeated. But this whole idea of a path and using discernment to make the right choices. The path may seem right, but it's not right. How do we know? Is to use just discernment, to prayerfully consider, to wait until you feel like God's leading in that direction or not. But some of the other verses in Proverbs 16 that kind of led me to that was verse 1 says, "We can make our own plans, but the Lord gives the right answer." And I read that and it makes me think of when I was a child, or if you're a parent, you've had children, sometimes kids, have these grand ideas, these plans that they've already set into place with their friends. Hey, after school on Friday, 6 of my friends are coming over and we're going to eat, ice cream and watch movies all night. That's the plans they made. But the parent's going to give the right answer, right? Like, hey, okay, your friends can come over and we can do some ice cream and watch a movie, but we're going to take everybody home by 9, right? The right answer is going to come from the adult, from the parent. And I think that sometimes with God, we make plans and we kind of do that same thing, and He says, okay, but here's the right answer. Here's how this should work out. Here's how it's going to work out. Verse 3, commit. The word means roll. Roll your actions to the Lord, and your plans will succeed. So commit your work, your actions to the Lord. So roll them to Him. Literally, roll over the things that we're doing to Him, and our plans will succeed. The plans will succeed because we've committed them to Him. We've rolled them to Him. So on our own, we can do our own thing. We can try to do our own thing, make our own decisions. But apart from God's success, of any significance and of anything of eternal matter is not likely not going to happen apart from Him. So we roll our plans over to Him, and they succeed. Verse 9, he says, we can make our plans, but the Lord determines our steps. Right? God's in control ultimately. Verse 33, we may throw the dice, but the Lord determines how they fall. Right? There's nothing by chance. Right? There's no fate, no destiny. It's God's will. But here's the struggle for us. We have choice. And how much of our free choice, is free from God, forcing us to do things? Are we free to make any decision and do anything, and God's not going to intervene or influence in any way? Or do I really have no free will? I have no choice, and God is in control, and we're just like robots, just doing what we're told? There's not a good, clear, easy answer to this question apart on this side of eternity. I mean, this is a conversation we can have with God when we meet Him face to face. But we know we have free choice, and we know we make choices apart from His will. Adam and Eve did that, right? That's what started this whole story. Was they did what God told them not to do. They chose to do something that God said not to do, and then dealt with the consequences. So we see this with our own decisions, right? We make decisions apart from His will, but then we deal with the consequences. Galatians chapter 6, verse 7 says, don't be misled. God will not be mocked. You will always harvest what you plant, right? You reap what you sow. Apart from God or with God, you put, corn seeds into the ground, you're going to get corn plants. That's what happens. Whatever you plant is what you harvest. That's true in the physical world. It's true in the spiritual world. So the choices we make, oftentimes the consequences of what done, the choices that we've made, we harvest things that can be blessing, and they can not be blessing, right? Sometimes we sow from planting, from our sowing is negative. We make bad decisions. We deal with negative consequences, right? But then we can see that God is in control. He's a sovereign God. In Isaiah chapter 46, verses 9 and 10, God speaking, he says, "Remember the things I've done in the past, for I alone am God. I am God, there is none like me. Only I can tell you the future before it happens. Everything I plan will come to pass, for I do whatever I wish." Ultimately, he's a sovereign God. He's in control. And we have we're in the middle of this, you know, between God's will and his fulfillment of his plan and his work, and our free choice, for the decisions that we make for our own lives and for the lives of those that we have influence over. We could see how God works in situations, and this is all through the Bible. But when I was reading this, the first one I think of is Jonah, right? He's my favorite character in the Bible. I relate the most to him. God told him very clearly, do something. He did the opposite. He said, go to Nineveh. And Jonah went to the opposite place because he didn't want to go to Nineveh and deal with the Ninevites. He went and got on a ship and went in the opposite direction. On that ship, we know the story of Jonah, right? Storms start crashing onto that boat, scares the people on the boat. Jonah's like, I know why this is happening. The only way you're going to stop this is to throw me over. Gets thrown over. The fish swallows him up, spends 3 days in there. It literally has a come to Jesus moment, come to God moment, prays a prayer. Fish spits him out. Chapter 3 of Jonah, God gives him the same direction to go to Nineveh, same plan, go to Nineveh, do this, and this time he went. So we can see that God influences our decisions. Jonah made a decision to do something apart from God. God influenced him. He was reaping what he was sowing, right? He was walking away from the will of God. So he was experiencing a literal storm in his life. And he could have continued on that. But the influence of God in that environment, in that situation, drew him back. And we see that happen. God, influences, and God intervenes. We can see God's intervention. It's hard to argue with Paul, who was Saul, persecutor of the church, on the road to Damascus, and literally Jesus intersects the road he's on. He intervened. There was an intervention in his life. Saul was blinded, spent a few days that way before the truth was told to him, and he committed to literally switch sides and go from being a persecutor of the church to, the greatest missionary of our faith. So, but again, he had a choice. He could have said, I'm not going to do this, and remained blind, for the rest of his life, or for however long he would have stayed blind. But God definitely influenced and intervened in his life to get him to change directions. And we see this same persistence oftentimes in our own lives of the Holy Spirit. I call them like spiritual nudges. They just don't go away. There's a persistence, like, I need to do this, I need to do this. And then we make decisions apart from it. We feel that. We understand that, this is not right. I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be doing this. And when we can still push through that, and we do in our stubbornness oftentimes and in our selfishness, but we still get the influence of God. And if we're a believer, if we're a follower, then it's definitely going to continue. So the best plan we can have is to prayerfully discern the will of God and to choose his way. It's the safest and best place we can be. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow for Proverbs 17. Thanks for joining.